Introduction, and for those of you here, I appreciate your time. My name is Scott Mater, CEO and co-founder here at AseptiScope. We're a local San Diego-based medical device company right up in Sorrento Valley. Today, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the concept of market-driven science and how we leverage that analytic method into driving clinical innovation that matters. I've been doing this for about 35 years in pharmaceutical, biopharma, in vitro diagnostic, and medical device. At Aseptiscope, I'll talk to you a little bit of how we're applying it in real time as basically a case study for market-driven science. First, a definition. Market-driven science, simply put, is a customer-centric analytic method to identify, validate, and drive innovation into target markets. In healthcare, clinically applied innovation means we're doing problem solving in areas of unmet healthcare need. Attribute identification is done on unique and optimized clinical value. What are the clinical factors today that define a solution for a significant problem in healthcare? Nowadays, more than ever, return on investment is not only necessary for the company and its investors, but also for your target audience. Healthcare deployment now is at a saturation point, and for full hospital systems and healthcare delivery networks to adopt products, ideally, they should not lose money in the process, and that's a very important thing. Once again, I've been doing this for a long time. Back in the late 90s, we did this. I was at Bristol Myers Squibb, where I was launching products through the 90s. Glucophage was a great example of market-driven science. It's also known as metformin, and it's currently the gold standard from a scientific basis in type 2 diabetes. It's foundation therapy. It was transformative care, and also a top 30 prescription launch list drug. This is from Data Monitor's 2000 Diabetes, a market-driven by innovation program. And indeed it was. We had great success there. In the early 2000s, I'd moved to the West Coast to join a local startup that has been a really nice success story in Sorrento Valley, a company by the name of BioSite. Several of the folks here at Aseptiscope worked with me in the commercial success that is the BioSite story. It was driven by a cardiovascular biomarker unique to the world by the name of BNP. We launched it on a point of care platform test, not too different in size than the technology we're introducing at Aseptiscope. This data monitor slide compares the analyst's expectations and forecast for BNP versus in blue bars the actual revenue sales in BNP that we really drove to an exponent of what the analyst predicted. And this was a $300 million revenue target that we actually were able to achieve. And BioSite sold for $1.6 billion to Inverness in 2007. Now, after that, everyone went home happy, and I started a consulting practice, Clendever 360, to develop clinical markets and market brands for innovation. My clients were everyone from Fortune 50 pharmaceuticals to young startup incubators here in San Diego or abroad. We developed clinical demand through realistic clinical profiling, which is a baseline dynamic and mapping using market-driven science. And you can kind of see on this graphic on the left y-axis, you see a variety of attributes. We identify a complete list of attributes that define a target market. We identify the gaps in that by mapping current standards of care and other alternative care practices. And when you find the holes, you look to fill it with a unique value-driven innovation. And then you use 3 development programs that you see in the Venn diagram: product development, clinical development, and market development in order to generate demand for that innovation. Let me expand on that. At Aseptiscope, as a case study, we're doing that in healthcare-associated infection. HAI has a huge impact on healthcare in the U.S. and globally. But when you're at your most vulnerable, you shouldn't have to wonder whether seeking healthcare is a good thing or not. But today, 2 million infections are transmitted in the U.S. every year during the course of caregiving. That's 1 in 25 hospitalized patients. 200,000 patients die in the U.S. every year through HAI. $40 billion is spent in direct costs, $140 billion in total cost. So this is an existential challenge for modern healthcare delivery. Now, it's not a challenge because we have no idea what to do. We actually do know aseptic technique is an absolute standard practice for preventing transmission. The real problem with aseptic technique is that it is a discipline that requires intense training. There's human error involved. There's a great deal of time and precision involved. In the picture here, you see somebody being gowned for surgery. Now, in areas like interventional procedures, burn units, um, areas where there is no room for error whatsoever, we take that time and resource, we train heavily, and we qualify people. But where healthcare is deployed broadly, we're simply squirting alcohol in as much stuff as possible and grabbing gloves out of essentially open air Kleenex containers that are vulnerable to contamination through aerosol or through touch. And so it's really not a clean environment. This is PPE that protects the clinician, but not necessarily the patient. We're just doing the best we can because innovation has not led a hand. Today at AseptiScope, we're planning on automating aseptic technique through market-driven science. Let me show you how. First, let's look at why. The market is vast. The truth of the matter is immune-compromised populations are enormous, and just three quick examples: cancer treatment patients who are immune-compromised, neonates that do not have mature immune systems, elderly compromised populations, and in fact, a wide variety of small market segments that present to healthcare with great routine and seriologically from corticosteroid use right through things like edematous extremities, healing scars, fistula identification. But even if you have a healthy immune system, you still deserve and should receive clean healthcare deployment. That when you are provided with healthcare, you should not receive, you should do no harm. And infection control protocols need to reflect that. At the very baseline, the CDC and healthcare providers and the regulators of healthcare providers are those that focus on a very important core foundation, hand hygiene, between every single patient. You have to have protocols in place. You have to have compliance with those protocols. You gel in, you gel out, you glove in, you glove out. And this is a very important thing. Unfortunately, we have come to know over the last decade, although there was information out there for the last quarter century, that the clinicians actually have a third hand that is contaminated that is never being cleaned. The stethoscope, the most commonly used medical instrument in healthcare today, touches U.S. patients just like the hands over 5 billion times a year in the U.S., and it is as densely contaminated, same density and diversity of pathogens as the most contaminated aspect of the hands, the fingertips, and yet we do nothing about it. So we are going to, at AseptiScope, use market-driven science and the automation of aseptic technique to provide a clean glove for the clinician's third hand. Today, innovation has not lent a hand at all. CDC says you should clean with alcohol for 60 seconds between every patient. This is an untenable practice in a high workflow environment where healthcare is deployed. We have done several direct observational studies and published them in the peer-reviewed literature showing that it is done actually no more than 4% of the time. And when you do clean, technique is important, the time you spend is important, the type of detergent you're using, alcohol 65%, 70%, other types of cleaning solutions, all have a variable effect on the resistant pathogens in healthcare. The only other option today are these cheap facsimiles to professional grade stethoscopes called single patient or disposable stethoscopes. They cost about $6 each. They use a lot of material. They are dedicated to one patient, and this is the rationale for them, that if one patient has one stethoscope, the stethoscope can't transmit a pathogen to the patient. It is a flawed concept. It is not developed through market-driven science, nor is it evidence-based. In fact, you now have every staff physician, nurse, and respiratory therapist all handling the same single stethoscope. So you are contaminating it much worse. You're all sharing the same contaminated earbuds. And because it's a cheap stethoscope, you are diminishing the ability for clinicians to hear pathology sounds the way they need to, both chronically and acutely. This is an enormous market space. In the US alone, this is a $1.9 billion market space. Globally, the total accessible market for the individuals that develop a true solution to this problem is over 100 billion stethoscope exams or auscultations per year in the accessible market, the developed market. Now, the clinical demand model is based on three phases of development: product development, clinical development, and market development. Product development is developed through market-driven science. I'll walk you through that with the AseptiScope example. Clinical development is the validation of what that innovation does and its impact in healthcare. Market development is conditioning the market to demand change. In other words, bringing a high amount of awareness to the problem and exactly what will resolve it. If you can bring all these development paths together in relatively synchronized timing, that is when you see the hockey stick curves that I showed you before with both glucophage and the triage BNP test, and is very elusive to a lot of products. We're doing it with AseptiScope now, and it's a very exciting time for us. So with product development, we're leveraging market-driven science. This is the way I've been doing it for 35 years, and here's how it works basically. You leverage every piece of data you can. You develop quantitative and qualitative metrics to absorb that data in the analysis, and then you drive from that information a full clinical attribute profile that characterizes an entirety of a market. For example, stethoscope contamination and the stethoscope hygiene market. This elicits a full range, anywhere sometimes from as few as 10 to as many as 200 different attributes that characterize a market. With the Discover system in stethoscope hygiene, we ultimately grabbed onto the 40 top attributes and designed a solution based on that. If you look at the Discover system in our product development program, the first development path of the three, you can see that we've developed a disc cover, a medical grade tape that is housed and kept completely aseptic inside a roll of 420 that are cold sealed inside a carrier tape, and that carrier tape inside a clean cassette. These are produced in clean room environments and shipped to hospitals where they are popped into a wall-mounted, state-of-the-art, sensor-based dispenser that has its own energy sourcing and is at the point of care ready to dispense perfectly clean single-use disc covers. 12 of the attributes of the 40 are over on the right-hand side as an example of the attribute priority listings. The result is a dispensable product that requires no training, is simple to use, is very consistent in a world where stethoscope diaphragms are inconsistent and non-standardized in size and shape. The disc cover, you wave under the sensor, you apply and you remove, and then when you're done with this perfectly clean, acoustically invisible exam, you move to the next room and apply the next one, much as you do with hand hygiene. Very excited that the folks on the right, my co-founder Kelly Powers, who was also our Chief Operating Officer, and Kevin Delsignor, who's our Senior Director of Engineering, have gone about the heavy lifting of a significant quality management process and system, manufacturing license and assembly process. So we now have the Discover systems being manufactured in-house. This drives quality up, drives costs down, and provides a wonderful window to launch into this year. The way we're doing it is through, as you see on the left, completely clean room driven Discover products that go into these housed rolls that are sealed, maintained as aseptic in rolls of 420 that are then assembled on the right into these clean cassettes that are shipped to hospitals, completely aseptic, completely clean. And these single-use covers do not see the light of day from the moment they were produced in clean rooms to the moment they are applied to a stethoscope diaphragm. And this is the automation of aseptic technique for the first time. The results, this is from a clinic up the road, the Kipper Clinic up in Encinitas, California, one of our first to use it, and a very somebody who's been this has been on Stuart Kipper's radar for a long time, stethoscope contamination, and he's thrilled and has worked with us so has allowed us access to take a shot of how in any of his patient rooms you wave, apply, and remove, and it saves a great deal of time. It is 100% effective for the very first time, and he can hear his patients through it seamlessly. Now you've seen product development. So I'm going to tell you now about the second phase of development, clinical development, and this is the validation of how this technology works. Now this is a class 1 medical device, so the FDA does not require this level of rigor. We have accommodated FDA requirements and filed as we've gone to launch. But our development program goes well past that. It's more akin to a 510K or even a PMA filing because it is our goal to create a sea change in the marketplace, to restructure guidelines that are handed down to care, and to really advance patient safety. Now, when the Mayo Clinic proceedings published our primary efficacy data, it was accommodated with an editorial comment from Mayo's invited guest author who called this a new scope for the stethoscope, and we're very thrilled about it. Obviously, the efficacy data was very, very positive. Since that time, we have not only published that important data on efficacy, but we have also, through controlled studies and published in peer-reviewed journals, we've demonstrated that this technology is always clean. It's always an aseptic surface. It is superior to standard of care alcohol and also the alternative disposable stethoscopes. It is immediately applied, saving time for patient and healthcare. It is also acoustically invisible. It is easy to use. It requires no training. It is workflow compatible, expert endorsed, and now the Cleveland Clinic has just published its study showing that it is actually patient preferred. It turns out in a pandemic or a post-pandemic period, patients like to see that they are being protected, and the Discover system does just that. Another one of our publications looked at the first 7 centers utilizing the system, and they took a few hundred of these clinicians, took a 5-point Likert scale survey looking at their attitudes about new technology of this nature, and they showed that over 95% of them believed that this is technology that is easy to use with no training. It is superior to what they were using before. It improves hygiene compliance, which is critical, and ultimately improves patient safety in their perception. And of course, all clinicians want to do the right thing. It's just impossible to do if innovation does not step up and lend a hand. And now we're doing it. Now, when you use market-driven science, the other thing is that you are looking out into the future. And it's very nice that within a few months of our efficacy data being published in the peer review, the CDC's advisory group HICPAC also published in the Annals of Internal Medicine a process for assessing products for infection prevention. And in fact, these 6 key nodes, as they call them, are the critical sections that they feel committees should examine about new technology in infection control. When the Discover Systems product profile and clinical development program are lined up with those 6 nodes, we meet or exceed every single one. And that goes into our value analysis packet that goes in front of committees that are reviewing the system. The next section is market development. We have to wake up the market and create a sea change in the market and how infection prevention is dealt with. Now, this is a wonderful thing. Last month, we were we had a feature story in the USA Today, and it brought really great visibility to what we're doing. We're very excited about it, but it was the result really of a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of work engaging the market in a different way. Healthcare providers are recognizing that evidence, and we went out first to those who have been investigating and publishing on stethoscope hygiene and contamination since before AseptiScope existed. We engaged those folks, brought them together in a professional conclave to discuss this issue. They published a call to action for the CDC to elevate stethoscope disinfection guidelines to that of the hand, and insisting between patients that they confirm disinfection or change of a disposable barrier between every patient encounter. The next year, a different group. These are folks that published the new normal in infection control in a high impact medical journal that's peer reviewed. And these experts were the heads of infectious disease at some of the top cancer hospitals in the country and the world. Memorial Sloan Kettering out east, MD Anderson in the central US, City of Hope here in Duarte, California, and Moore's Cancer Center right here in San Diego. These experts published that failure to be managing stethoscope contamination and having a hygiene protocol in place basically serves to undermine everything that we're doing in infection control today, and it needs to be done. The third piece that happened just this year in the sequence is called Our Third Hand, Hygiene in the Era of Alcohol Resistant Pathogens. These experts took a different look at it and in a major peer-reviewed journal took the position that this is a concept that is called antimicrobial stewardship. And what that means is that if you are overusing antibiotics, if you're overusing antimicrobials, things like alcohol, you are building and evolving very resistant strains of pathogens. These are called MDROs. They're things like MRSA, methicillin-resistant staph, Clostridium difficile that kills thousands of patients a year in the U.S. and has over 500,000 different infections that happen. And if you are simply using a clean single-use barrier, you are 100% effective at protecting and shielding patients from those pathogens, while at the same time not contributing to the evolution of resistant strains. And so the authors here concluded that aseptic barriers are likely the simplest answer to this problem. It's nice also when there's tables in peer-reviewed journals that really reflect the concept of market-driven science. You can see the attributes on this table 3 from the American Journal of Infection Control, where the authors listed the top, I think, 10 or 12 attributes that they feel are important, compare it to everything out there, and they come to the simple conclusion that the Discover system aligns very nicely with all of those attributes. We've been very busy driving awareness into the market, awareness of the problem, awareness of the limitation of current methods, and awareness of the solutions. We also have an absolute expert faculty that provide accredited online educational programming and on-site educational programming, and this has really elevated the stakes in stethoscope hygiene to a new level. We've also gotten the word out there to the point where syndicated market research groups like this one, the Insight Partners, are now tracking for the first time the stethoscope hygiene market and reporting on it as a high year-over-year double-digit growth market space that is in fact driven by what they call the disc covers market. So we're very excited about that. It's a good, we don't know these people, but they've done their homework, and the truth of the matter is we are the big game in town. Now, I'm going to talk to you for a few minutes about our current launch this year of the Discover system. Hospitals are now coming back online. They tend to have very significant staff shortages. They're not quite into the black yet in general, but they are moving forward in the post-pandemic period, and the market is opening up slowly, and we're taking advantage of that and having good success. Clinicians really like the product, and so we are already in some very high visibility institutions. We also are being evaluated at some marquee institutions, some of the best names in the world, and we are also going into community hospitals and clinic settings and urgent care settings, and the traction is finally starting to take. Very excited about that. Dispensers are going up on the walls as fast as possible. As a matter of fact, the middle photo includes our VP of Sales, one of our reps down in Houston, Texas, and our brand manager, Anthony Pham, who are out in the field now with suitcase strap marks on their shoulders constantly. They are busy, and we're very excited about it. Hospitals like MD Anderson are very important because this one represents a marquee institution for cancer care. It is in the central United States in Houston, Texas. Their head of infectious disease, Roy Shamali, is a published expert in stethoscope contamination. And as we bring these folks online, you find that the entire market segment of cancer care, which is a group of patients that are immune compromised by definition, really are going to have access to unprecedented safety innovation. The largest integrated healthcare group in the United States as the VAs nationwide. And we currently are being evaluated in their Orlando Innovation Center and also commercialized in their Memphis VA Medical Center. We are now talking to 3 other VAs and have gained access to them through a collaborative partnership with a group called Apiary that gives us access to the federal supply schedule. University of California is a tremendous example of a healthcare provider that is system-wide across the state. You can see the multiple University of California medical centers on the right. The patient lives that we're covering are enormous here, and we are already in and commercialized in UCSD's Sepulveda Center, their Bankers Hill Center, their Urgent Care Center, and expanding. We are also moving up with a unit being evaluated at UC Irvine. We're talking to UC Davis, and this is not only about protecting patients and the volume that this brings, but also the influence of this leadership center across the state. Now, finally, this is not philanthropy, but one of the things that I really love, and 35 years of doing this with innovation, is that we really are helping patients. There's no reason you cannot yield a nice profit while you're doing that, because you are saving lives, you're improving mortality and morbidity, and you're saving healthcare delivery money. And that is a very important thing. But ultimately, it's wonderful to ensure, especially in the post-pandemic period, that patients are protected. This is a shameless endorsement of this book, Purposeful Enterprise. It's written by my brother, who is a consultant at Ampersand on the Eastern Seaboard, and he's a professor of medicine, or I'm sorry, a professor of innovation rather, at Dalhousie University in Nova Scotia, where the town from which we hail, and the province from which we hail. So this is in his book something that he timestamps in it as a very important component, that the spirit of any innovation should be an interest in shaking the world, changing the world, and making an impression. If you do this properly, profits and success come with that. This is the spirit that we instill in the culture at AseptiScope from its very foundation when we came upon this great challenge to the time we are today, commercializing innovation. I'll give you an example of why this is so important and why industry and innovation are critical to the solution in healthcare. In 1996, quarter of a century ago, more than that, a nice publication in Archives of Internal Medicine by Dr. Erickson and colleagues was published, and it was a significant one because it came to the conclusion that these stethoscopes are contaminated, they transmit, they're a major health hazard, and they are recommending disinfection between patients or regular use of what they called disposable stethoscope covers, something that didn't exist at the time. But that was an important study, and it was picked up by the American Medical Association in a newsletter that was captured by SHEA, an epidemiology group that writes the guidelines. They reported that the American Medical Association House of Delegates developed a resolution and called for advocacy of clean stethoscopes in order to minimize healthcare-associated infection risk. They also reached out to SHEA at the time and asked them for recommendations that they could disseminate to physicians about cleaning stethoscopes. Now, this really did not happen, and it doesn't mean that it happened for wrong reasons. Perhaps the weight of evidence had not matured at that time. But in any event, we are very excited. If you look at Dr. Erickson, decade over decade, from the 90s to the early part of the century to 2023, where we are now, this is somebody who deserves to see his study through, because the data now shows convincingly that he was absolutely correct. So we can hardly wait to send him new guidelines along with his seminal publication. And we are going about that heavy lifting. Year in, year out, we have been conducting controlled studies. We're publishing the peer-reviewed literature. We are educating using expert faculty, and we are bringing them together and calling for the CDC and SHEA to produce these guidelines. And we believe this is the thing that creates as you see on the top, a paradigm shift or a sea change in the way infection control protocols integrate stethoscope hygiene requirements. We are almost there. In fact, we have good reason on many fronts to believe that. We've got direct communications. We have been corresponding directly with the CDC and their advisors, and we also have seen hand hygiene guidelines renewed last year, and typically it's about a year before the device guidelines come, and with that, stethoscope guidelines. So we're excited about it because we believe this will yield an increased regulatory emphasis on stethoscope hygiene and an increased recommendation for a new type of technology that's superior to what has been out there, as demonstrated in the peer-reviewed literature, and that is aseptic single-use disc covers. This is now a market that's on fire. This just from this past week in MedPage Today, the most significant medical online news portal. And this is by a infectious disease expert from Westchester, New York, calling stethoscope hygiene the next frontier in infection control. So this is something that is now echoed across healthcare. The awareness is up, the pistons are firing, the market is opening, and we are very excited because it's not just stethoscopes, but the automation of aseptic technique is needed in hand hygiene. It's needed with the growing, skyrocketing discipline of ultrasound, where transducers and probes are highly contaminated in touching patients. And in fact, at AseptiScope, our IP family and our portfolio is all about automation of aseptic technique for critical vectors like these. We've asked and polled our clinical constituency, and they have told us very firmly that they do want, loud and clear, this type of technology. We've actually published this in the peer review as well. So we're very excited to be out there and driving innovation. My name is Scott Mader. I am CEO and co-founder at AseptiScope, and we are bringing infection protection for clinicians and patients today through market-driven science. Thanks for your time.